Yeah, again, it's only through experience. You can't build mental toughness by watching a movie, reading a book, listening to a pod. You just can't. It's only through experience. And so the biggest challenge for me to lay out would be to intentionally seek discomfort.
Welcome back to another episode of the One Life Podcast. I'm your host, Devin Rodriguez, and our goal with this show is to enable and empower you to discover who you are so that you can take full advantage of the one life you have to live. I am super excited to have today's guest because today's guest is not only a one-time record holder, but he's broken multiple world records. First off, in 2010, he completed 22 half Ironmans in a 30-week period to become the first person to ever do that. In 2012, if that wasn't enough, because that is pretty crazy in its own right, our guest decided to step it up just a bit and complete the most Ironmans in a calendar year with 30. Then in 2015, he did something which is going to be recorded and remembered forever in the history of ultra endurance sports, specifically within the Ironman community, in which he did the 50-50-50, which has been a hit and has enabled James to become a public icon if he wasn't already. He completed 50 Ironmans in 50 states in 50 days. One more time, 50 Ironmans in 50 days in 50 states. But I think the most interesting part about James Lawrence's story, who we're going to hear from shortly, is that he wasn't a naturally gifted person who just was always, as I was just telling him, a gifted track athlete growing up, super fast, always had great endurance, but he struggled along the way. And there were many people who, as he went through these endeavors, told him that it couldn't be done. In fact, multiple doctors advised him, probably shouldn't do it, James, because you probably get hurt. But he persevered through all of the setbacks that he actually encountered within all of his challenges, which he's going to talk about a little more. But this is truly a person who has redefined what possible is, and for me personally has become someone that I've looked up to on so many scales. So I really thank you for being here with us, James, and really sharing your story with my community.
Thanks, Devin. I really appreciate it. It's always fun to hear somebody else intro you, and you kind of sit back and you're like, is that guy talking about me? So yeah, man, thanks for having me. And we're living in crazy times right now.
Yep.
And I hope that someone listening can benefit from the conversation we're going to have.
Yeah, James, and I think that's a good point that you brought up. I think this could bring a lot of positivity and light to somebody's life potentially. So to start off, James, as I was alluding to, you accomplished all of these illustrious and crazy things that people can't even comprehend, something that I can barely comprehend even after watching your Netflix documentary. I watched it on Netflix. But I'm curious as to who was James growing up and how did he become the person who completed the 50-50-50 and broke multiple world records? Because I think that especially for young people who are just trying to figure out what life is all about, hearing your story is beyond powerful because, as we were saying, you didn't just grow up as a naturally gifted or talented person. So if you could just cover for us a little bit about your childhood and then how you became the Iron Cowboy, who is now the Iron Cowboy. Still crazy to think, but please share with us, James.
Yeah, I think especially in, coming out of high school, into college, figuring that out, I think everybody is putting too much emphasis on what's my purpose, what's my passion? What is it right now I have to know? What is my purpose, what's my passion? I grew up playing all sports. I grew up loving wrestling. I grew up in my early 20s just deep diving into the sport of golf. I didn't find, and those still remain passions for me today, but I didn't truly find the passion of triathlon mid to late 20s. And again, you look at people now 17, 18, up to the 22, 23, just like depressed and losing themselves because they haven't found their passion yet. And I'm shocked that any 20-year-old would know at this point what their passion, their purpose, and it's an evolution. It should always be changing. And the number one piece of advice I can give to young people, and I still consider myself young, but I am 44. I have some life experience. I've done some stuff. But the reality is you have to try everything. And the only way to find your true passion is to go do it and find out if, man, this really resonates with you. I didn't know I loved wrestling till I really started. In fact, I hated wrestling when I started to do it. And then as I started to learn the sport and the value of it and discipline and all that, I started to fall in love with it. And golf, man, I was a terrible golfer when I started, right? That shouldn't be my passion, but I really loved it and I wanted to learn more. That's how you figure out and discover what a passion could be. And so, my background is just diversity, adventure, curiosity, showing up, relentless pursuit, all that kind of stuff. And most people are like, man, I read that book. Why don't I know what my passions are? And I'm like, what? You're an idiot. Go do something, right? And everybody's like, well, I listened to this podcast. Why don't I know what my purpose in life is? And I'm like, well, now you're an idiot. Now go do something. And so, my best advice to the younger people, dude, to become mentally tough, you have to have experiences. To know what your passions are, you have to have experiences. Everything boils down to the answer is go have an experience. Only then will you learn, grow, adapt, evolve, and find out what your purpose and passion is.
Right. So then, James, I think that's a really good point, because especially I think college, and I just graduated from college, but I think there is such a heavy emphasis on you have to figure out exactly what it is, or else you've wasted the last 4 years of your life. And I think that's what a problem of academia is that, like you were saying, mental toughness, there's only so much that you can read about it. But if you don't put yourself in those uncomfortable positions, then you're never actually going to develop the mental resiliency. And I think that's something that you're a testament to. And I want to talk about that a little later. But how did you actually, because you said you didn't find it until about your late 20s, how did you come across triathlons and what was your journey to get there?
Yeah, really through my wife. She was a runner. We started running together. I was just kind of wrestled my entire life, got into golf, was always kind of a gym rat, throwing some weight and metal around and just being a man, right? And it was really cool. I started to run with her, and I didn't really enjoy it. And it was right when Lance Armstrong was coming on strong, and the cycling, and that became really exciting. I saw the World Championships in Kona, Hawaii for Ironman on TV. So all of those things at the same time was just thrown at me, and I was like, man, I don't have the outlet to wrestle anymore. I had just missed my pro card in golfing, and I had a little family, little kids. I was like, I'm going to try something different. And then just really gravitated towards it. Loved the community, loved the challenge. There was a new challenge. I didn't know how to swim, had to learn that. And it was just, I just dove in and really started to enjoy all the different elements of it, and really the community too, and the people that were in it. And it gave me a competitive outlet as a man in my 20s who was trying to figure out a new family. And I grew up in Canada, and so trying to figure out how the United States works and feels and operates and all that stuff. And so I was just really, again, discovering and trying to try new things. And it escalated quickly, and one thing led to another. And here we are, 15 years later with a little bit of a resume.
Right. So then I would like for you to share a little bit about the fun run that you like to tell, because I think that speaks exactly to the point that we're trying to get at about this being a process of discovery. It doesn't just pop up. So talk to us a little bit about that experience with your wife, and what your wife had to say to you as well.
Yeah, she called me pathetic is what happened. But it's crazy, over the past 5 years, I didn't set out to do this, but I've had the opportunity to speak in 48 different countries.
Wow. And
one of my main messages that has evolved because of my understanding of different people and the experiences that they've had is that everybody's heart is different. And ultimately, our 50 was a headline that people read, but there's a decade prior to that moment or that headline. And I think people truly need to understand that my journey started and I struggled through a 4-mile fun run. And at the moment, that was my heart. But then over a course of years and showing up and learning and having intent and sacrificing and all that stuff, I was able to go on and break a couple world records. And like you said, the 50, which is not my words, but it's considered one of the greatest endurance feats in sports history, which is crazy to me. And I would have never said, to myself in that first race that I did, where I was literally getting passed by beautiful women pushing their kids in strollers, that I would go on to have a successful career that I have. And it's just proof positive that anybody can do anything. You just have to put in the time, sacrifice the right amount, and keep showing up. Keep showing up.
Right. So then, James, what was it like once you committed to saying, okay, I'm actually enjoying this Ironman thing that I'm doing? So at what point did you recognize that, I can actually be pretty good at this? Because like you said, for me personally, I'm not a good swimmer. I could run, I don't even know if I could bike, honestly, because I've never been like a competitive biker or anything, but I can't swim. And I think that's similar. I could swim, but you know what I'm trying to get at. I don't know if I could do 2 miles. So how did you get to the point where you were like, okay, now I could swim. I feel pretty confident and then realize that I'm actually pretty good at this Ironman thing?
Well, I think if you're doing something right, you get better as time passes. Meaning, I didn't set out to do an Ironman. I set out to explore the sport of triathlon. Right. And I did shorter races. I had a 500-meter pool swim. That was inside my comfort level. And as I was learning, I started to evolve. And you'll know this, having been through college and some military and things like that, that when you're in the middle of something, right, when you're there for the first time and doing it, it's overwhelming. And it's the hardest thing you've ever done. But now that you graduated high school, you look back and go, man, that was tough, but I've learned and I'm a different person. And now that you just graduated college, you're like, oh, that was tough when I was in the middle of it, but now I have experience and I've learned. And so it's the same thing. No way my brain could have conceptualized a 2.4 mile swim when I didn't know how to swim, right? But I was like, okay, I could see the other side of the pool. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to swim to the other side of the pool. And success breeds success. Confidence breeds confidence, right? And so you are choosing not to swim 2 miles. And the problem is most people set too big of a goal or are in too big of a hurry to reach that goal and don't give the goal the respect that it deserves. So you right now, a 2.4 mile swim is not a bad goal. You doing a 2.4 mile swim this weekend, terrible goal, right? You don't have the confidence. You don't have the experience. You're probably going to hurt yourself. You might die and drown, right? So there's all these things. So fear and conversations start to happen. So swimming 2.4, not a bad goal. Swimming it this weekend, terrible goal. You have to respect the journey and then have a game plan on how to achieve that goal. So can you swim 2.4? Yes. Can you do it right now? No.
So break it down incrementally that you have little checkpoints along the way. Right. So do you think that because I think what it could result in is you're really setting yourself up for failure. If you're just going to, like you were saying, if I were to just go out and swim 2.4, probably not going to be able to do it. Or if I do, it's not going to go well.
Yeah. And then you're going to be hard on yourself. You're going to not show up again. You're going to lack confidence, all these things. And that's the biggest thing is people set these big goals, which is great. It's a huge part of my platform, right? I think as adults, we've stopped dreaming. And even not that you're a kid, but people your age too have also stopped dreaming. And it's because it's been beaten down to us. Take the safe path, do this, don't take chances, all these things, right? And so dreaming is huge and setting monster goals is huge. But then you have to take the steps appropriate in order to get there. You have to fail in training and push the boundaries so that when you take that test, you pass that test, right? But everybody's trying to rush it. People come to me all the time. This is what I want to do. This is when I want to do it. And I'm always like, that's what you want to do. And that's when you want to do it. I'm like, no. We need to let's reverse engineer this and let's ensure your success, right? And let's set up realistic benchmarks along the way. Everybody's in too big of a hurry and not willing to do the work it takes to do something of that magnitude.
So then, James, what in the process of not only preparing for the 50, but going through your journey as an athlete, as a man throughout your 44-year life, how have you been able to develop mental toughness, resiliency, whatever you want to call it? Do you do any certain practices, or is there anything that you do in particular that you can share with us? Or what has your journey been? Because, for example, from watching documentary and so forth, there were a lot of obstacles that you faced. Your shoulder, I think you tore your shoulder. Weather was really bad at certain points. You had to adapt. Things weren't always perfect. And I think that you were able to adapt and overcome instead of saying, okay, there's this barrier, now I just sit and quit. So what advice would you give to somebody to build that mental resiliency?
Yeah, again, it's only through experience. You can't build mental toughness by watching a movie, reading a book, listening to a podcast. You just can't. It's only through experience. And so the biggest challenge for me to lay out would be to intentionally seek discomfort. And you hear a lot of the big influencers talk about it all the time, and the mental giants in the space. They're always saying, no, you have to intentionally seek and do difficult things outside your comfort zone. We live in an unbelievable time. We live in an unbelievable country to where comfort for a lot is at our fingertips. And, you know, as crazy as life is, we still live in a very unbelievable place. And I think, especially the younger generation, and trust me, I don't have any problem or beef with millennials. I love them. Even whatever you guys call your generation. I think you guys are great, and I think there's value in what you guys do. But I do think that life has different elements of comfort to it, and the art of hard work has been lost somewhat in some people, and there's a lot of entitlement problems. And so I believe it's a challenge, and I think individuals like a guy like you, who you seem to have it together, like as far as like trajectory and goals and hard work and accomplishments already in your early life. And that's testament of, to me, it means you showed up and you've worked through difficult problems and solved those things. And that's how you gain that experience. Again, success breeds success and confidence breeds confidence. And only through trial and error and failing can you grow and adapt and evolve.
Yeah, it's just that the thing that I think stops a lot of us, and this is even from personal experience when I was younger. So James, I faced a lot of bullying for about 6 years when I was younger, and it really sucked when I was going through it. But as I shared on a different podcast with another guest, I told them that one thing remained constant, and that was whenever my parents asked me if I wanted to transfer out, I always told them no. But now, and I had no clue why back then while I was telling them no, but as I look back now, it was the fact that I didn't want anyone else to determine my future for me except for myself. And then now, as I went through high school and college, and then things started to click here and there, I kept going back to that moment of adversity. And although it was really, really tough during the moment, I'm so grateful now that I actually went through it, because it enabled me to develop, different skills, mental toughness, things that would have bothered me if I didn't go through it don't bother me now.
Perspective.
And that's my favorite word, perspective, because it really enabled me to see life through a new lens. But if I would have just said, yes, I'll transfer out and go to another school, not that there's necessarily anything wrong with that. I just think my life would have been different. So
I think to that point, one, congratulations on doing that. But to your point, a lot of people aren't seeking to learn from the adversity and challenges, which makes them stronger. They're panicking and looking for the easy button. And the easy button doesn't serve anybody, because now you're a different person. And now you could come into an environment or situation, and not only do you have the experience to handle that, it doesn't trigger you emotionally and put you in a spiral that will lead to a bunch of other negativity and bad things, right? And so overcoming that in that situation makes you a stronger person so that you can handle it. And we'll use this real life scenario right now of COVID. I get not everybody's in the same boat, but a lot of the situational things are happening to us. And take a look around and see how other people are handling a same situation, right? Those people have a little bit more experience in how to handle their minds, how to handle fear, how to handle the unknown, a lot of that, right? That comes from experience. So take a look around and look at someone who, same financial situation, make sure all the parameters are the same. How are those individuals handling the exact same scenario very differently? And it probably has a lot to do with their previous life experiences that they've had and what they've been through in that moment.
Right. Yeah, I really like that part, James. So I'm curious, and I've heard you speak on a little bit, but what made you set out and create such a big vision? Because I think that's something that a lot of people are missing. And for me, I think of I hear vision board. I don't have a vision board. I have a vision for where I want to go, but I really want to get more particular with where I want to go. And I know what you were saying about it's a discovery, but how did you come across like, okay, I did these things, but now I have a vision of accomplishing something that most people don't even find to be realistic?
Yeah, you know, and again, it's perception and perspective. Because when I started on this journey, the 50 wasn't even on my mind. I couldn't even
Of course.
conceptualize it.
Yeah.
And so the big goal was 22 half Ironmans, and that we put that on the mantle, and we started to work towards that. And again, as you get through it, you gain experience and knowledge, and then it can expand. And then I would say, oh, it's got to be the full Ironmans. That's the next logical, you know. And at the time, that was the hardest thing I could think of, and the hardest thing I could do, both mentally, physically, and where I was in my life. But that's the beauty of life, right? So as you continue and progress, the big only becomes bigger and more impossible to others, because they don't have that perception and perspective that you have. When I announced we were going to do the 50 after the 30, people were like, that's not even possible. What are you talking about? I was the only one that had the perspective and the experience from doing 30. I was the only one that could have been in that seat where I was like, you know, that's possible, because I had lived it, right?
Right.
And that goes back to the whole point of, you have to go up, show up, and live in order to have the experiences to even be able to conceptualize something so big. And to your point, okay, so everybody should have, everybody knows or has heard, dream big, shoot for the stars, right? All these things.
Of course.
And then we've all heard, visualize it, manifest it, put it on a vision board, see it. That's step one. Those two things are step one. The most important step is step two, and it includes two things. And these are the two things that very few people are willing to do, and these two things are the most important. Do the work. Most people aren't willing to show up and do the work. I'll lay out the game plan of what it's going to take to achieve that goal, and people are like, oh, I didn't realize that's what it was going to take. I'm out, right? And then they go back to their comfortable lives. And the other thing too is, after you visualize it, or after you have the dream and the goal, after you visualize it, after you've done the work, while you're doing the work, you have to feel it. There's a big difference between manifesting it and visualizing it, and internalizing it and feeling it before it happens. That gets more into like meditation over just visualization. Like meditation brings in the feelings of it happening. And so really have the dream, have the vision, visualize it, do the work, and as you're working, feel it happening. When I was leading up to the 50, they had interviewers and they would be like, what do you think your chances are of finishing this, of doing this? And I was like, I don't even understand your question. Like, I've already done it. I've already felt it. Like it's done. It's 300%. What are you talking about? And that's the attitude and mindset that people don't have going into something of this magnitude, is they don't put it out there in that way that they've done it. They've seen it. So anytime I set a goal, I make sure it's massive. I make sure I give myself enough time, but you have to show up with a relentless pursuit and then feel it as if you've done it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I kind of practice is similar to the feeling it part. So I'll give you an example. So in school, bringing it back to school, because that's only one of the things that I've experienced up until this point. Sure. But prior to the semester starting, for example, I would go, and I'm always in pursuit of trying to find a new way to hold myself accountable. And one of the ways that I've found that I can do that is through letting other people know my goals via social media. Because I've noticed that once I do that, it's like if I give up, I'm not only giving up on myself, but I'm giving up on everyone else that saw that and knew that, yeah, he's going to go out and do that. So I would go before the semester started and say, you know, I'm going to get a perfect GPA for this semester. And I truly internalized it and believed it. And then the moment that I kind of felt throughout the course of the semester, because of course there's going to be challenges, setbacks, etc., I would always keep that in my mind, that I'm not only giving up on myself. And then the funny thing is that while I did struggle, because I'd never been a naturally gifted student who just can't study and get perfect scores, when I went online and would see my grades and see that I accomplished that goal, I wasn't thinking about being in the middle of it anymore, or, you know, oh, I have to study tomorrow, or et cetera, et cetera. It was like all of that was so worth it now, because now I've won.
Yeah.
So it makes me reflect back to watching you and seeing you. I don't remember what day it was, but the interview that you gave to that woman when you were like half asleep and you could barely utter any words out of your mouth. And I look at that and I'm like, man, this guy means business. And how were you able to drive on each and every day? Because like we're saying, a lot of people can't even visualize that or perceive how you were able to keep going day after day after day on 4 hours of sleep per night if you're lucky. Yeah. In a vehicle. That's where you got all your sleep. You weren't sleeping in a hotel bed. You know, how were you able to pick up your feet, you know, put on your wetsuit, get on your bike, put on your shoes, and do it repetitively day after day?
Yeah, that video, that interview you're talking about was on day 21 in Florida.
It's hysterical.
And yeah, it's funny. And what's crazy is the compounding effect of an Ironman a day from 21 to 50 is staggering. But it's just like you said, it's that accountability. And you know, I'm a firm believer that nothing great is ever accomplished on our own. And there was a team out there with me.
Yeah.
There's a lot more people that made sacrifices than just me. And so if I don't wake up on day 21 and do what I said I was going to do and be a man of my word, I'm not only letting down myself, I'm letting down my 5 kids, I'm letting down my wife, I'm letting down the entire crew that was there. I'm letting down the people that are watching on social media that expect me to show up and fail. I'm showing up to not give the guy that doesn't think I can do it any power, right? And, you know, there's just so many reasons. And that's why accountability is so important. That's why being public with what you're doing is important. That's why we have workout partners. That's why we make side bets. I mean, I've been getting back in shape, and one of my coaches is like, okay, we've got a race in 6 weeks. We both have like 6 pounds to lose. What's the bet? And we're like, all you can eat sushi. And so even now, like I don't necessarily need that side bet as a whatever, but I'm just like, no, okay, I'm a big sushi guy. Like I can pound some all you can eat. And so like even now, just that accountability is so key and critical. And that's why we don't quit on things, is because I think the biggest reason should be, and unfortunately it's not, is I said so. I said I was going to do that, and then you follow through. And the consequence is I'm no longer a man of my word, right? And so I would love to see that be a lot more mainstream, where it's like a handshake and a smile. That's worth something. And unfortunately, that has gone a lot to the wayside nowadays. But man, if that could be my challenge to any young person walking around right now, dude, you shake somebody's hand and you say words that come out of your mouth, that means something. And you stand by that and you do it. And I said I was going to do 50 Ironmans, 50 days, 50 states to the best of my ability. And that's what I try to do every single day.
So then, James, what is the message that you think that your kids are receiving from what you're doing? Because I think that's something that's an interesting thing to discuss. You know, what do you want your kids, as they're growing up, to be like, that's my dad, and he's enabled me to see that this is possible? What do you want the message to your kids to be?
Yeah, not just to my kids, but to everybody. Number one is believe in yourself, because it truly starts with you. Nobody's going to buy into what you're doing and believe what you're doing if you don't believe in yourself. 2, you have to be doing it for the right reasons. So do a really great self-audit of why you're doing something, and do it for you, right? All the other brand building and monetizing, that's all going to come. If you're doing it for you because it's your passion, because it's like, that's the reason you should be doing it. Find out why you're doing it. And then lastly, the secret to success is truly doing a lot of little things consistently over a long period of time. And so believe in yourself and show up every single day, and you seriously can't lose. If you do those 2 things, you cannot lose. Because eventually over time you'll hit that goal. I just did a 50 miler on the weekend, and it got really rough between 38 and 42, and we were on a really steep pitch and up in the Wasatch Mountains, and I was just like, well, you have 2 choices. Keep moving your feet, and eventually you're going to hit the summit, and you're going to be able to go back down in 8 more miles to the finish. Or stop, and you're guaranteed not to reach it, right? So I just said to myself, just keep moving, and eventually you'll do it. Time doesn't care about us, right? So as long as we keep showing up, and keep doing everything we can, eventually you're going to get there. And I think that's the biggest thing is people try to rush success. They try to rush what they're doing, and they don't appreciate the journey. And I just said, okay, look, these 4 miles are going to be real. And I'm just going to look around and take in the beauty, because all I can control is the way I'm perceiving my environment, and literally one step at a time. Because that way I could guarantee, I can't tell you the exact time, but I guarantee you I'm going to make it, because it's my choice and I'm choosing not to stop moving.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's really powerful, James. And that for me, like that little visualization that you just threw at us of those 4 miles and controlling what you can control, I think that is so powerful and key. For me personally, I know it has. The last thing I want to ask, James, is when you're no longer here, what do you really want your legacy to be, and what impact do you hope to leave on Earth forever?
Yeah, I love the Macklemore song where he's like, you die twice, once when you die and once when someone last says your name. And I think that should be everybody's goal, is to do something and leave an impact, whatever that is. And that just comes out of being consistent and being kind. And I want my legacy to be, I don't care if people say, oh man, that guy did 50 Ironmans. I want them to be like, no, he was a father, and he was a great husband. And I'm super stoked to say that I'm heading into 20 years of marriage, and I've got 5 kids, and we try really hard. There's a great saying in Utah. It says there's no success outside your home that'll ever compensate for failure in your home.
Wow.
And I think if more people made that their mission, and just had experiences and found their passions and did everything out of kindness, we wouldn't see a lot of the things we're seeing today.
Right.
And I think if everybody took care of their home and what's inside their home, then the world would just simply be awesome.
Right. Well, for those of you that don't know, James's family followed him the whole trip on his 50, I don't even know, extravaganza, whatever one wants to call it. It was amazing. And they are just as big as role models for me as you completing it, because they were so dedicated to you and your success and anything you needed, whether it was your wife, your kids, your crew. Unbelievable support system you had. And you, I know that you are so grateful because you outwardly expressed that. And I want to outwardly express my thanks and gratitude for you being here with us, James, because you've enabled not only me, but I think a lot of other people to realize, specifically, take it step by step and enjoy the journey. And that's what I've taken away the most from this. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here, James.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Devin. Hope everyone got a little piece of something. Hope everyone's staying safe. And I guess my last parting thought would be, go out there and find your passions and live every day like it's our last, because we truly have no idea when something's going to be taken away from us. And if we've learned anything over this past little bit since March 2020, that things can be taken away from us pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And don't look back and have regrets. And I woulda, coulda, shoulda. And if you're tired of starting over, stop giving up. And it's okay not to know how you're going to achieve your crazy big goals. At some point in time, you need to stop planning. You just need to start showing up. So good luck to everybody, man. And I appreciate you inviting me on your show. It's super humbling.
Thank you guys so much for listening to yet another episode of the One Life podcast. I hope that you were able to take 1 or 2 of these ideas that we discussed today and are able to implement them in your life to make you more successful in whatever it is that you're chasing. Remember, only one life to live, no time to wait. Act now. See you guys on the next episode of the One Life podcast.